So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 316, and oh boy, is this another doozy, with, once again, the ending of this chapter having a explosive conclusion. And all for one, as usual. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about in this chapter, and we'll talk about it right after this intro. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here, coming at you with another My Hero Academia manga chapter review. This time reviewing manga chapter 316, titled The Next. Ooh, I wonder who's going to be the next villain that Deku fights. I wonder who's going to be the next person that Deku saves. Is there going to be the next joke to this line? No. And am I going to stop this? Maybe I'll stop it the next time. Okay, but yeah, this was a really good chapter for My Hero Academia, as always, since the last few chapters have been very great. But this one has a little difference to it, mainly because there's going to be a lot of dialogue. Basically, this is going to be the conclusion of the Lady Nagant fight, and going into something unexpected, but expected, and very impactful, but not. You'll understand it when we get there, but before we actually get more started with the review, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel at BigBlueDrew97 if you like this type of content. I like to talk about My Hero Academia, do discussions, I go through spoilers, I do reviews. So if that's something that you're interested in and you just stumbled upon this video, hi, welcome to the channel, and hopefully you enjoy this type of content. And without the way, let's get right into the actual review. So to start off, when it comes to the first part of this chapter, it's basically a continuation of what we saw last chapter, with the addition of like a few minor differences. Once again, the explosion did go off. Last chapter we realized that not only does Hawks still have his feathers, but that he was able to save Lady Nagant. So we're continuing from there, where now we have Endeavor coming into the scene, basically saying that he got a call from All Might, and that the reason why he didn't get there sooner is because of the rain, which, you know, makes a whole lot of sense. He's a fireman, and firemen don't do well against the rain, because, you know, fire can be like put out by water, unless it's like a grease fire where if you add water to it, it'll make it worse. But he's not that type of fireman, so it doesn't really matter with that aspect. But yes, Endeavor comes to the rescue. He was late because of the rain, and then you have Deku who sees Endeavor. And this is a very fun scene, because you have Deku saying Ende, and then Hawks continues with it with Vor. So it's like Deku's like Ende, and Hawks is like, Vor, help me. Unfortunately, even though I have my wings, they're not big enough for me to carry two people. So I need some help. But luckily enough, Deku still has Black Whip, and he's able to rescue Hawks before he's able to fall. But then there's still the problem of Deku has literally taken a beating throughout this entire fight, and it doesn't help that he got an explosion to the face. So even though he was able to catch them with Black Whip, he's still unable to like really keep them from like falling. Like, they're safe for now, but he can't really do anything more than that. And this is where Deku basically explains everything that just happened within the past, I don't know, 5 minutes, where he basically tells Hawks that, Lady Nagant, she exploded. She probably didn't want to do that. It was probably a quirk from All for One. This was all apparently a trap. So yeah, there's that. And when Deku just says that, Hawks immediately goes into, once again, Talk no Jutsu. Wow, you thought that Deku was the only one that can use Talk no Jutsu? No, Hawks can also use it. And in actuality, it actually works. Basically, what Hawks tells Lady Nagant is that he is her successor, which means that when Lady Nagant was eventually arrested, that he took up her position as the hero that is the face of the Public Hero Safety Commission. The Hero Public Safety Commission. I think that's what it is. It's still confusing. But yeah, that he's now took over her place, but that he is like chastising her a little bit. It's like how she was manipulated by All for One. How could she allow that? And how he talks to her and says that she should understand that there's still hope in the world, and that she shouldn't have given up too easily after fighting with Deku. and how before she dies, she needs to still have hope. She needs to keep the hope alive, and that he's telling her that you were manipulated, but you're still a hero. You're still Lady Nagant, so please help us. And as he's saying this, you just have Lady Nagant that's like probably fading in and out of consciousness, and is having this existential crisis in her head as she's looking at Hawks, and we get to understand a little bit of like what's going on in her mind as Hawks is saying this, as we get like this small like glimmer of light in the darkness, as we get kind of like in a dialogue from Lady Nagant, where she's basically saying like, oh, you're the successor, you're the person who was a part of the Public Hero Safety Commission. And then she begins to wonder, like, I did a whole lot of horrible things, and they probably made you do it too, but why do you still have that fire in your eyes? Why do both you and that kid still have hope in your eyes? And when did I begin to view the world with this negative mindset? And so she's looking at them, seeing how they still have hope, and because of that, that inspires her to do one last thing before she either dies or just goes unconscious immediately, as in her last moments, she screams, in the next 2 months, the target will be brought to the mansion in Hibai Forest, or Habori Forest. And presumably at this moment she passes out, as Deku is able to hopefully softly lay both Lady Nagant and Hawks on the ground, so they are safe for now. And also a very interesting panel that we see is just of a younger Lady Nagant, where you see like the darkness that was most likely shrouding her thoughts, shrouding like what she thought of Hero Society, sort of kind of being lifted away from here, where she begins to see the person that she was before, you know, without all the murder and the corruption and the manipulation, what she truly is at our core. So that's a very interesting scene to see. So Lady Nagant and Hawks are successfully placed on the ground, and they're safe, as well as Deku also hitting the ground, as we also see that Lady Nagant is still conscious, as she begins to tell the crew a little bit more information about All For One, as well as the fact that he has like 7 people that also he recruited, just like Lady Nagant, to be called to his side, to be a part of his team. And something interesting with this one panel that we see is that we may see a familiar face of Chimera. We can't say for certain that it is Chimera because we don't really see all of his like physical features, but we see that he has dreads, and we see that he has little ears, as well as like, if you could kind of make it out that he could potentially have the dog face. I can't say for certain, but yeah, Chimera is probably there, meaning that if Deku has to fight a character like Chimera, or like as we saw in the Heroes Rising movie, a character like Nine, which I think we also kind of see a figure of Nine in the background as well. Oh yeah, no, he's gonna need a whole lot of help, and that's basically why Lady Nagant told him this, is that if he's going to go after All For One, he's gonna need a lot of help, and he has a tough road ahead of him. As she also begins to also wonder like how both Hawks is able to do what he did, how her heart couldn't stand everything that she did, but how he is able to face all of this trials and tribulations on his own, where Hawks basically gives her the explanation that, well, I just had someone supporting me. Also, I'm just a very optimistic person. So, if we want to argue like why Hawks wasn't corrupted, he's just an optimistic person. Meaning that Lady Nagant was just very pessimistic and didn't see like the good on the other side of the world. So, you know, that makes sense. I forgot to turn the yellow light on, but that's beside the point. Now that we have Lady Nagant and she's potentially alive, we have Endeavor coming onto the scene with a broken Kai Chisaki, as he is once again complaining about how this wasn't a part of the plan. I was supposed to go see the boss. You were supposed to take me to go see the boss. He's the only one that I have left. And Deku just looks at Chisaki and is just like, oh yeah, I gotta deal with you, don't I? As he begins saying that he wants to apologize and that he wants to do this and how he wants to do that. And Deku just looks at him with just these like eyes of like, okay, I gotta deal with this. Yeah, Chisaki. And Chisaki is like, oh, I don't want to listen to you, you little bastard. I need that woman. And he's just like, oh gosh, come on. Deku's like, oh, come on. Chisaki, do you remember what you did to Eri? And overall is like, Eri? Oh yeah, if I had her right now. And then he's like, seems like you want to apologize to someone. If only you feel the same way towards Eri. And that just stings coming from Deku, because he just has this just like non-expressive, non-emotive face, talking to Chisaki, as he also tells Chisaki that, yeah, I promise that you made to Lady Nagant, I'll keep it. And this is just something that shocks Chisaki, because he just, like, hates Deku. He's like, it's all your fault, the reason why I'm here. I can't apologize to the boss. You just had to save Eri. And, you're actually gonna help me? Okay. I'll stay quiet then. And with that one word, he just shuts up Chisaki in an instant, and it's just amazing. Now we don't have to keep hearing him say, boss, 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 boss. So yeah, that's gonna be good. Also, All Might's here, and he's worried about Midoriya, which he should always be. So now everyone is all together, everyone is all safe, and now Endeavor says that he needs to take Chisaki and Lady Nagant to the emergency hospital to have their wounds treated, as well as Midoriya needs to go to a hospital too, because he's been, you know, for the past like months, just going around saving people, not really resting. He needs to heal his body. And we all know Deku. We all know Midoriya. We know that he doesn't do that. He knows where All For One could potentially be. So you can take a wild guess on what he does. So we immediately cut to Deku going to the mansion with another set of pro heroes, because obviously that is what he would do. And from here we get the confirmation of who is going to the Habori Forest. We have Best Jeanist, who is talking to Hawks over a radio, telling him to be careful, because I'm pretty sure Hawks is not here at this moment. We also have Endeavor, who's telling Deku to literally wait and not be reckless. To my response is, it's Deku. He's always reckless. The fact that he has One for All was because he's reckless. This is all a part of his character, as well as we get to see that Kamui Woods, Edshot, and Mount Lady are here as well. Oh man, this is gonna be great. Man, it's been a while since we've seen these characters. The last time we saw them, they just had to take a beating from both Dabi and Gigantomachia, as well as with Redestro. Man, I really hope we get to see more of these characters. It would be a shame if something bad happened to them, like, I don't know, like in last chapter, Lady Nagant explode. It would be really bad if these characters were caught in an explosion. So yeah, we immediately cut to Deku, who's thinking about how, at this moment in time, All For One and Shigaraki are both not ready to take One For All, as he steps into this building. And something interesting that I need to bring up about this building is that this building is actually the mansion of the Creature Rejection Clan, and it's their hideout. And it's very amazing for the characters to be going into basically the equivalent of the Ku Klux Klan's hideout in the My Hero Academia world. Cool. So yeah, Deku and the pro heroes into the building, as for some random, unexpected, but completely planned reason, All For One just comes on the screen and is like, oh, did you enjoy your talk with Lady Nagant, Izuku Midoriya? Ah man, it's been a while. This video was supposed to start when you enter the room. Also, when it comes to why this is happening, let's just say that I have the ability to, I don't know, predict the people's future. He doesn't really say that. What he actually says is that he loves to anticipate what someone like Deku is going to do, and how he can't bring himself to abandon people like her, right? So this is something I want to touch on. Does All For One have the ability to predict the future? There are two answers to this. Yes or no. If the answer is yes, that means that it's going to be extremely difficult to defeat him unless Deku is able to change the future, which we know for a fact that he can, if not for All For One, with the help of Eri, if not his own will to do it. If it's no, then he's a fucking genius psychopath, because he's able to predict the actions of other people without a quirk to a T, and have the plans go off without a hitch. If not, the only hitch is that something happens that he didn't plan for, when in actuality he did plan for example, Lady Nagant switching sides, and what she would do with the information that she gives Deku, and what happens at the end of this chapter he also plans, even though we wouldn't have thought he planned it. That will make a lot more sense in the next few pages. So yeah, from the next few pages, we just have All For One just going on a monologue about humanity and its nature, and the ideas of quirks in society, and how humans fit into these societies, and how people fall through the cracks. And I want to do like a small breakdown, probably another video, about everything that he says, but generally what he's saying is that humans are like destructive by nature before society was ever created, and that's just who we are. And a response that I will probably go into a little bit more detail in another video is that that is true, but we also have the aspect of nurture, that even though it is in someone's quote-unquote nature to do something else, you can still nurture them to do something better or not to do that destructive thing. That is the idea of nature versus nurture. Neither one is objectively better or is objectively the right thing than the other. It depends on the balance between them and how they work and intertwine with one another. And that is something that All For One just does not see, or chooses not to see, or purposely ignores. I mean, he is a villain, like, in like the greatest sense of the term, so it makes sense that he would have just disregarded that fact. It's like, oh yeah, humans are just naturally bad, but what about if we could train them better? Bang! Oh, what was that? Oh well. So yeah, we just have that one piece of monologue coming from All For One, and he talks also about how Deku has chosen a path that is the thorniest, and how eventually, if he continues to walk down this path, he will see no end in sight. And how when he was in prison, he stopped thinking about All Might, and that he started to focus his interest all on Deku. He has no interest in All Might. He has all of his interest on Deku. And all I'm gonna say is this: literally, All For One, it is not healthy to have a little 16, 17-year-old boy always in your thoughts at all time in the back of your head. That's very creepy, but you're a villain, but that's still a level of creepy. And at the end of this chapter, he says that you're next, and he explodes the mansion. So yeah, like I said, he predicted something that we never would have predicted, and yet still was able to account for that, and blew up the mansion. Let me remind you, Deku, Endeavor, Bechinist, Kamui Woods, Mount Lady, as well as Edgeshot was in that mansion, and it exploded. Probably next chapter, we're gonna cut over to the other heroes at UA and not see the conclusion of this. Possibly, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, let me go into a little bit more discussion about what this chapter did right and what this chapter did wrong. This chapter didn't really do a whole lot of things wrong. It did a whole lot of things right though. For starters, the monologue between All For One and Deku. That just shows more of All For One's like character, his thought process, what type of character that he is, what type of person he is, how he views that basically humans are just in their nature, just destructive, even before societies were created, and that he's just allowing people to live their natures, and how society is wrong, and that whatever society is created, it cannot ignore the fact of human nature and all that. So we're getting a little bit more characterization of All For One as a character as well as a villain. Also, once again, he is a victim blamer, because something else that I didn't bring up is that he basically says that the reasoning why Lady Nagant ended up in the situation that she was in was because it was all her decision. He didn't make a decision for her. He didn't choose her path at all. That was all of her. Except for the fact that you gave her a quirk that would explode if she never met the criteria for your mission. So, you know, there's that. But yeah, we got a little bit more characterization for All For One through his monologue, as well as the fact that he has the ability to either see the future, or he's just very strategic and has very like meticulous planning, that he can basically predict what people will do and have counter plans for that prediction, and then have even more counter plans for that prediction that he didn't get and guarantee would actually go through. Basically, he has plan A, B, C, all the way down to Alpha and Z. He goes through the normal alphabet, then he goes through the Latin alphabet. That's how detailed All For One could potentially be, or he can just see the future. So it's interesting to see like whether or not which one is going to be the case, because it could also be that he just has a connection with All For One and One For All, which is why he's able to kind of like predict what Deku is going to do. We just don't know for sure, but either way, it adds like a little bit more depth to him as a villain, as well as we got to see a little bit more characterization for Lady Nagant and her realization that she was still a hero, but that she allowed herself to be clouded, and how even though there are people in this world that should have ended up like her, for the example Hawks, they were able to get away from it because of not just their nature, but potentially how they grew up, and the fact that Hawk's just more of an optimistic god, meaning that most likely the reason why Lady Nagant failed is because not only did she not have like faith in the hero society, but she just didn't like have faith in herself, and that she didn't have someone at her back helping and pushing her forward, pushing her out of the darkness into the light, until she met Hawks and until she met Deku, which is why she was able to work with him at the very end. Unfortunately, if I were to say one bad, we do not get the confirmation of whether or not Lady Nagant is dead or if she's alive, but most likely after the fact that she's still talking, and even though she has cracks in her face, she was still able to hold like a decent conversation. I would say most likely than not, she's still going to survive, but we probably won't be seeing a whole lot of her, if any, in the upcoming arcs up until like the end of the series, which is very unfortunate. But she was a very good character when we saw her. She had a very good like development with the little time that we had. So overall, she's still a very great character, and she will be loved so much. So yeah, we have that, but then we also have the main chunk when it came to Chisaki and Deku with their small conversation they had, which is very interesting because it shows that Chisaki hasn't changed from the person that he was. He doesn't have any regret for what he did to Eri, but he does have regret for what he did to his boss. And it's very interesting that that is something that Deku catches onto, because it means that he still doesn't care for Chisaki. He still probably has some resentment for what he did to Eri, but he understands that he isn't like all completely evil. He's all not completely bad. Sure, he abused a girl, but he still feels empathetic or apologetic to his boss that he directly wronged. So it shows that even though his priorities aren't fully there, he still has some priorities that Deku can see, and it's like, okay, you're still a horrible person, but you have that one thing that you're willing to apologize for, meaning that you're not completely bad. You're still not great in the slightest. If anything, you're still bad, you're just a little bit less bad. And I think that's kind of like how Deku viewed the conversation, and there could be a point where Chisaki eventually does reform completely, maybe, or conform a little bit more to the point where he's able to apologize to Eri, or at the very least will reach a point where Eri is able to like not necessarily forgive, but like accept what Chisaki did and begin to move on away from that. So either way, this is going to most likely build up to Chisaki changing, or it's going to be a moment where Eri has to confront Chisaki, where she will have to make a choice of whether or not she will accept, forgive, or just move on. And that's going to be very interesting when that occurs. So yeah, overall, really enjoyed this chapter, really enjoyed everything that happened with Lady Nagant. Hawks' talk no jutsu was very great, as well as just getting Deku and his like small conversation between himself as well as Chisaki. That was also good. The potential foreshadowing to the other potential strong villains that could eventually lead to fights between Deku and these main villains, or even other students of UA and other heroes versus these heroes that are now, these villains that are now working under All For One. That was very great as well as just the understanding and getting a better understanding of who All For One is as a character is very amazing, and we get a lot of that in this chapter, as well as a big kaboom. So what do I think is going to happen in next chapter? I think most likely what's going to happen is one of like a few things. One, we're either going to get the reveal of the second user's quirk that may have the capability of rescuing everyone in this building, taking them out of the building, but it will have some type of drawback for Deku where he'll be incapacitated for a while. We do not see that his danger sense goes off, unfortunately, so we cannot say for certain that he actually sees this explosion going off, but there's still a possibility that that second quirk is potentially like a shield quirk that he could possibly use to shield everyone from the explosion to take damage, which makes it apply to the idea that his quirks are non-combatant but are very defensive and help for rescue and all that. So potentially he created a dome around them, but it has completely drained them, so they're safe. Second option is that he may be the only one that escaped this explosion because of his danger sense, or he was able to grab everyone out of the building with Black Whip before the explosion went off. That's also a possibility, but from how big we see the explosion is, it basically encompasses the entirety of the mansion, and as we saw, they were a fair good distance in it. So unless he's able to move faster than the explosion, that is very unlikely. So we're either potentially going to see the conclusion of what's going to happen after this cliffhanger in the next chapter, or we're immediately going to cut over to the students at UA and go into like either another flashback to what the students at UA and Class 1A and Class 1B are doing, and then we're continued down that path once again tying to the idea of My Hero Academia, where we're going to be following the lives of the students during the month that Deku is away, see the reactions, see the introduction of Shinzo, most likely into Class 2B, and get an understanding of like what they're going to be doing during this time, as well as potentially what they will be doing next to fight against the other villains. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of those two things. We're either going to continue from what we saw where Deku was able to save all the people, or if he potentially doesn't, or we're going to cut over to the students in UA and see what they're doing, or potentially both. So yeah, either way, I'll be fine with it, and we'll be progressing with the story at a well-paced pace, and I'm just going to be really looking forward to reading that chapter. Also, I'm pretty sure we're not on break next week, so we'll be able to get it next week as well. So yeah, that's all the thoughts that I have on My Hero Academia. What did you think of this chapter? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Do you think that it's a good idea that Lady Nagant is alive? Do you think that Chisaki should be forgiven? And do you think that All For One is a giant prick? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Leave a like on this video if you liked it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel at BigBlueDream97. Hit that notification bell to be notified for whenever I upload. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!